Welcome to Happy Talks with Dr. Alice and Donovan. Dr. Alice Fong is a holistic naturopathic doctor and founder of Amor de Soi Wellness. And Donovan Jensen is a software engineer and founder of HowToHappy.com. Together, they're out to cause more happiness in the world.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Happy Talks. My name is Dr. Alice, and this is my awesome co-host, Donovan. And today we have a special guest I'm excited for, Klein, who's the world's only jollytologist, shows audience worldwide how to use humor and positivity to deal with life's not so funny stuff. I love it, Alan.
I thought I'd set the tone here.
Set the tone. I love it. Great. For those who are tuning into the podcast, Alan just put on a red clown nose. So welcome, Alan. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, wonderful to be here. It's such a beautiful, happy day where I am, and I hope it is where you are too.
Yeah, definitely. Great. Well, yeah, tell us a little about jollytologist and what led you to this realm, or what is it? Tell us your journey. Yes, let's start there.
What is a jollytologist?
Yeah.
Well, it's not a proctologist.
That's very different.
Very different.
I don't think I want my proctologist to be a jollytologist.
I actually made up that name, and it's registered and copyrighted, so no one else can take it. But I went back to school to get a master's degree in human, Human development, and my thesis, although I didn't write a thesis, I had to give a 3-hour lecture instead of the thesis, was on therapeutic humor. And I think the word laughter in Greek is gelos, G-E-L-O-S. So I started to call myself a gelotologist, and then people thought I made that dessert, So that didn't work. So I changed it to jollytologist, and people would say, what is that? And then I explained that I show people how to lighten up and use humor to deal with not so funny stuff. So 25 words or less, that's what it is. That's who I am. Oh, how did I get to do this? Yes. So it came out of a time in my life that was very difficult, very challenging. And my wife and I had moved to San Francisco. She lived here. I lived in New York City. We had a cross-country romance for a number of years. And then we moved to San Francisco, and we always would say we'd like one of those beautiful Victorian houses, that we have here in the city. And we got one. And then right after that, we found out she had a rare terminal liver disease.
Oh, wow.
And she did pass away 3 years after that. And needless to say, it was a very difficult time, but she always had a great sense of humor. We'd always laugh together. And yes, there was lots of tears during those 3 years, but it's the laughter that I remember. And I remembered how it helped lift us above what we were going through, gave us a reprieve, gave us a perspective. And that's what humor always does, gets you to see things a little differently. I can give you one example, my classic example of humor in the difficult time. She was in the hospital, and she had a copy of Playgirl magazine with the male nude centerfold. And she said,
"Oh,
hey, Alan, yeah, exactly. I really like this, man. Can you put it on the wall by the bed over there?" And I said, Ellen, it's a hospital. It's a little risque for that. She said, well, maybe you're right. She said, why don't you get a leaf from the plant over there and cover up that part? And Alice and Donovan, I did that, and things are fine for the first day, fine for the second day, but the third day, the leaves start shriveling up. And we came home from the hospital, and we would start to laugh. And that's when I realized how important laughter was, even if it was 5 or 10 seconds, but it really just changed the whole atmosphere in the room, changed the way we were feeling. It gave us a little bit of hope. And so that's when I went back to school to get the master's degree, and I wrote my first book, The Healing Power of Humor. So that's how I came to humor, through a kind of, I guess, an unusual way, through what some people would say was a tragedy.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that story with us. It's really powerful, just in that short amount of time, how you can show how much humor can really change just the situation that you're in. I want to dig in a little bit more on maybe some of that work that you did, and talk or ask a little bit about therapeutic humor as opposed to, I guess, maybe other therapeutic modalities, or what do you see as sort of the differences and how people can start integrating that sort of approach?
Right. Well, as you were saying that, I was thinking, what about laughter in a nightclub? Stand-up comedians. And then some people might say, well, that's not therapeutic, but people are not thinking about their stress, their problems when they're laughing, how they get to laugh. It could be a stand-up comedian. It could be a sitcom on TV. It could be with a friend at a coffee shop. It could be from reading a book. I mean, I don't think how you get it matters as much as that you get it, and that it's healing, because physiologically there are changes. You breathe deeper when you're laughing. You forget about some of your stress. You get more air in your lungs. There's all kinds of, your blood pressure goes up like you're running, and then you stop laughing, it goes below normal. So it's very aerobic, the laughter, if it's powerful. Big laughter, not just little tee, not that. So even in a nightclub, I think the laughter could be very beneficial. And I guess I'm like everyone else, I'm interchanging humor and laughter together in sentences, but they're really two different things. And I'm not a researcher, but you ask a researcher and you'll probably get a really long explanation of the difference. I don't do that. I try to keep it simple. So for me, humor is when you see something funny, or it's kind of like an attitude. You see the world differently and you start to lighten up about it. And then the laughter is the expression of seeing that thing that's funny. So that's my simple little explanation. But they're both beneficial. The laughter is more physical, so you get more physical benefits. The humor, I think, is more attitudinal. You get to see your challenges, your stress, your traffic jams. You see it differently.
Yeah, I could definitely see the therapeutic benefit, as well as improving our overall well-being. Although a question got kind of popped into my head when we think about humor and the benefits of it. What about like those moments where it is really heavy and it can lighten up the mood, but like say you were at a funeral and someone cracks a joke, and then there's going to be those people that think it's funny, and then there's those people that thinks it's really inappropriate. So what would you say to those people? I guess.
Well, I one of my specialties is humor in death and dying, and humor in hospice work. And people say, well, how can you laugh at a time like that? And I say, how can you not laugh at a time like that? It's when you're most stressed out, probably in your whole life. And if laughter gives you some stress relief, then why aren't you honoring this? And I'm not saying go in with a joke. I don't, at a funeral, maybe that's not appropriate. Maybe the person that died was a big jokester. And so that might be appropriate. You always have to kind of listen and assess the situation if you're going to tell a joke.
Mhm.
So I don't really teach people about learning jokes. I mean, that's fine if you can do it. Most people don't do it well. When I was teaching workshop, I'd ask how many people in this room could tell a joke well, and there were about 5 out of 100. So can you both tell a joke well?
Probably not.
No,
Hmm.
me
I'd probably
neither.
butcher it.
Yeah, I always forget the punchline,
Right. It's like, wait, how does this go? I forget.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
So what I do and what I teach is to look around you. There is humor all around. So at a funeral, people go and look in the coffin and say, "Oh, they never look so good," which is kind of bizarre.
Mhm.
Um, I read about a new priest that was officiating a funeral, and he looked in and he said, "See the body here? It's only the shell. The nut is gone." So, bizarre things happen at funerals.
Mhm.
So I have another book called Embracing Life After Loss. And
Oh.
it's about the 5 steps of going from loss to laughter.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and it's very simple. It's just some quotes and some of my thinking on it. And then very simple steps. When my wife had died,
Mm.
I went to the library and I took out some books on grieving,
Mhm.
and most of them were big, fat, heavy, 300-page books.
Mhm.
And they told me about like how terrible I'm going to feel, that I might not eat. I might lose my appetite. I might lose my sleep. I might be really stressed out. And I thought, I don't need these things. I'm already going through this, right? I
Right.
don't need this.
Mhm.
So later on years, I thought, I need to write a book to counteract those other books that tell me how terrible you're going to feel during grief. And so I
Mhm.
wrote this one, a very simple to kind of open anywhere, get a little uplifting motivational quotation, get a couple of words from me, and just sit with that and help
Mhm.
you go from loss to laughter. The other thing, there's an interesting study out. It was a 2-year study of bereaved spouses.
Mm.
And what they found is after 2 years, the survivor, if the survivor laughed during those 2 years, they did much better than the ones who did not.
Mm.
And so we think, well, it's not we just talked about, is it appropriate? It's
Mhm.
not only appropriate, but it's healthy.
Mhm.
And I think we don't, we're still in society, we don't see that kind of laughter and tears are very close together. And, both I'm not saying hold back the tears with laughter, because tears are very beneficial too. It gets
Absolutely.
they get those toxins out of our body, but the
Mhm.
laughter is just as beneficial. So I think we should not, people often feel guilty when they laugh and a
Mhm.
friend or loved one has died. And so I try to show people that how healthy it is and how it can help them get through that loss.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me because if I think about, if I were to die from whatever cause right now and people showed up at my funeral and obviously I can't speak for everyone, but if people showed up at my funeral and the whole time they were really somber and, if somebody made a joke and everyone else, I don't know, frowned on them or got really angry with them or whatever else, that's not the way that I would like things to go. Like I don't want everyone standing around somber, having a terrible time.
Yeah.
If somebody's having something funny to say, then that's what I would want. So I would imagine, like you said, I'm sure it depends on who the person was, who's around you, kind of the full context. Like if you're talking to their brother or a cousin or whoever else. But I can definitely see where there's opportunities to open up and have some more of those laughter experiences and especially after talking about it, I can see how useful it would be in terms of, or just like healthy is probably a better word, to feel some of those positive emotions in a time that's so heavy and hard.
Right. And maybe reminisce about the lighter times together, the fun times we had together. When I was writing one of my books, I interviewed people that have lost loved ones. And I said, how do you think your loved one would want you to live your life? And nearly all of them said, I'd want them to enjoy their life, to go on with their life, not to forget me, but to enjoy the rest of their life. I would not want them to be sorrowful and crying and grieving the rest of their life. That is not what I want. So it's kind of sometimes different. I remember when I was a hospice volunteer, there was a young woman in her early 30s. Her mother had died. And for 2 years, I worked with her and I could not get her out of her grief. It was just, and I felt sorry because it was like 2 lives were lost. The mother had died and now the daughter's life had kind of stood still and she didn't go out, she didn't date, she didn't do anything. She just sat at home, grieving, and that's not healthy. So laughter, I think, could help people get on with their life.
Oh, I absolutely agree. It's funny because last week we actually covered the topic of crying, which I was saying last week about how, crying is almost like the more grand expression of the sad emotion, essentially. And laughter is kind of like the exaggerated extension of joy and happiness. And it's like we need both of spectrums to have that balance. And I think it's a beautiful thing when we have both. But when people don't have, I feel like some people, when they're grieving, they don't give themselves permission to laugh because it would feel like, oh, I'm dishonoring the person that I loved or care about, or they just can't seem to find the joy in things even though they want to. So what are some things people can do to find more laughter when it's a real struggle for them?
I think often people that are grieving, like, hide away,
Yeah.
don't want to go out, don't want to see other people. I think maybe like do one thing a week or one thing a day, whatever it is, to kind of reach out. And one of the things that I found was really, really helpful after my wife died was I volunteered for hospice. Hospice works with the dying and the families of the dying.
Yeah.
And it was so helpful to be with, because I had been with my wife for 3 years while she was going through this process. So I had some experience to give these people that, yes, you will get through this. Somehow you will get through this, and that you need to start doing things in the world. And so by helping other people, I found that I was helping myself. And it doesn't have to be hospice. It could be a food bank. It could be reading to kids in a library, although with COVID these days, that may not be possible, but there are other things. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can volunteer on the phone on some helpline. There's all kinds of things you can do, but just start helping others. It kind of gets you out of your own, self to and know that you're doing good, and helping other people is like something you can attribute to your loss, the loved one you lost, that they've helped you now give back to the world. So there's a number of levels there that I think helping other people could help people who are grieving. And yeah.
On that note, I wanted to ask, because I've been kind of thinking about sort of the balance, right? We've been talking about, the grieving process, and then this process of sort of getting back out in the world, experiencing happiness, and things like that. I would be curious, and it seems like you've already talked about it a little bit, but if you have any advice for people on sort of striking that balance, right? Because I'm sure one day after, you might not feel like you're ready to go back out into the world and volunteer and do some stuff, but maybe a week later or a month later or 2 months, or anyway, I would just be curious your thoughts on finding some of that balance and sort of, I guess, building back up the muscle of going out and experiencing things.
Right. One, as you were talking, I thought about after my wife died, I had a business downtown San Francisco, and I was doing pretty well quite a while afterwards. But every now and then, I would, on my way to work, I would walk by the big, tall Bank of America building, and I would start to cry. And I just stopped in my tracks because my wife and I never had any association. I don't even think we had a Bank of America account. We banked elsewhere. There was something, I don't know if it was the darkness, the tallness. I don't know what it was. And it happened a number of times, and I have never been able to figure out why. But the thing about loss and tears is that you never know when that grief is going to strike you.
Yeah.
So, the thing is, I'm not sure you need to look for that balance so much as be aware that the grief can come on at any time, and it's okay. That it's okay when that comes.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't come, just enjoy your life. So, I think we talked about some of this. Be with friends, even if you just go out for coffee or take a walk in the park. One of the things that really helped me was my daughter and my dog. Taking a walk in the park with my dog. Sometimes it was sad, sometimes it wasn't, but it got me out of the house, right? The dog had to go to the bathroom. I had to get out of the house. And then my daughter, and I know some people with young children don't want to talk about, like their mother, the young kids' mother or dad died, and they don't want to talk, the other spouse doesn't want to talk about it. And one of the most helpful things I found, and it was just a gut reaction, is to not hide the loss from my daughter. And we would talk about, if we were stuck, like, what should we do? Should we go to this restaurant or that one, or, whatever, have Italian food tonight, or have a pizza or whatever, have a hot dog, whatever. Well, we'd ask each other, what would mommy do? In other words, we kept her memory alive. And I think that's a tip that, just because the person's body has died, their spirit is around forever. And I think the more you can talk about it, the more that person is somewhat alive to you. You haven't like buried them, they're still, you bury the body, but not the spirit. So just acknowledge, that person and what they meant to you in your life. And maybe focus on the joy that they brought, or the knowledge. I learned so many things from my wife, because believe it or not, I was a very shy person before I married her. And she was very outgoing, and a lot of it rubbed off on me. And I'm so grateful for that, and honor her for teaching me that. And in fact, my whole career changed because of her. Who would have thought I would be speaking to as many as 1,500 people in the Grand Ole Opry ballroom about therapeutic humor? Never would have happened without losing her. Not that I wanted her to die. But it just changed my life. And so every time I give a talk, I tell that hospital story with the magazine, and so I'm honoring her every time I do that.
Yeah, that's really, really beautiful, in that, just because someone passes on, their memory and what they've given us, and how we honor them, will always live on. And even in those dark moments, like, something incredible and beautiful manifested out of that, you being a speaker about therapeutic humor and helping others kind of move through their grief in a beautiful way. And I think that's really important. That kind of reminded me, I mean, obviously I've never lost a spouse, but I've gone through breakups probably a different experience, but still like a loss in a sense. And I remember, how I've grown over the years in that instead of just kind of keeping it to myself and not like being with people and sharing about the loss, the breakups I was able to get over sooner were the ones where I was being of service to others, being out there, connecting, talking with my friends about it, to be able to move through it rather than just kind of like hole up in a corner and just grieve and not really like move past the emotions or move through
Right.
the emotions. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just want for people listening, it's important to grieve. I mean, I did
Yeah,
grieve for quite a
absolutely.
long time, but it's also important to get on with your life. So
Mhm.
we need to bring back the laughter, because tears ain't going to do it.
I was just going to ask, we've been talking about laughter a little bit here and there. I'd be curious if you have any sort of like framework or any pieces or things, because you studied laughter, right, and looked at it pretty in depth, that we can use to bring more into our life, or sort of situations that produce laughter, or just since you've done the research, I'd be curious some of your thoughts specifically around laughter.
Mhm.
Okay, so I used to be a scenic designer in television. You're both too young to remember Captain Kangaroo, but it was a children's show that was on for over 25 years, and I was the designer. So whenever something came up, that a prop or something, I was the one who had to design it, and I had to think like a child because it was a kid
True.
show,
Yeah.
So one of the things I think that is rubbed off on me is I see the world more with childlike eyes.
Mm.
And in Zen, they talk about seeing the world. If you want to lighten up, you want to not be so stressed out, see the world with beginner's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So try to look at things in new ways, and for a child, everything is a playground. Everything is a toy,
Mm.
and it could be that way for adults too. In my new book, The Awe Factor, I don't know where, here it is. The awe factor, I talk about, just like look at a flower, but then look closer and even closer. And you start to see all different new, amazing things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one, is just start seeing your world a little different. Why do we have to be so adult-like all the time?
Mm-hmm.
It gets
I
you in
agree.
trouble. It gets you in trouble. It's not always fun.
Yeah.
Um, and the other is I because I worked in TV and kids show, I love props. I love things that help me to lighten up. So you saw the clown nose, but when I on my desk, I love like little silly things. Like somebody gave me a fake Oscar and I put a little thing on it.
Nice.
So, Dr. Alice, what happened? You saw this and you start to laugh, and Donovan, you smiled.
Mhm.
It doesn't take a lot, it just surround yourself with those things. I just recently got myself a Dr. Fauci doll.
Nice.
um, you may or may not like him. I like the doll at least. But it's and I think it might be worth lots of money in about 100 years when I'm not here. um, but just surround your things, or photos. Oh, that's the other
Mm.
thing. I
Yeah.
love having photos of my loved ones. And so here's a picture of my daughter with a cream pie thrown in her face.
Nice.
She was just coming home from camp and she wanted a pie thrown in her face. I have a
Random.
picture of my dog as a
Aw.
puppy.
Aw.
See, I mean,
Yeah.
it changes your mood,
Mhm.
and it doesn't, it's this piece of paper,
Yeah.
but it brings back memories that could help you lighten up.
Mm. Those are great tips and advice. And I appreciate the approaching or viewing the world with more like childlike wonder and awe. I think that's super important because I think as adults we also when I think of kids, it's just so easy for them to laugh and cry, or just they feel their feelings, they wear it on their sleeve. There's no like inner dialogue of like, should I cry? Would people like judge me? It's just like they just do it. Or should I laugh? They find the silliest things, like turning on a water faucet, silly. And
Right, right.
it's a beautiful thing. And I agree. I
Yeah.
think we could all learn a lot from
So
children.
be a little more playful. My daughter is 50 something now, I don't know, but
Mhm.
we still walk down the street, and when it moves us, we go up to a parking meter and make believe it's a microphone and we both sing into the microphone. I don't know. We're really together. We play a lot together.
Mhm. And it's nice you have like a family member who's on board with playing, because not everyone who your friends or family with might not be on board, but it's probably helps
Yeah,
both
it
of you
helps.
to move
Well,
forward.
that's the other thing, a tip to get
Mhm.
more lightness in your life is hang around people
Mm.
that help you to laugh and smile.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can give you an example of somebody we've put out of our life, except on certain occasions,
Mm.
because of who she is and the way
Mm.
she acts. So we have the power to do that, right? We don't have, unless you're married to them, you may not have to have them around all the time.
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, Alan, it's been such a pleasure to have you on our show. Before we wrap up today, is there anything you'd like to plug or share with our audience?
Well, I invite people to lighten up. Maybe have a
Yeah.
feather to remind you by
Oh,
your
good idea.
computer to lighten up.
Mhm.
Simple little thing. But yeah, all my books are on Amazon, or other booksellers, or your local bookstore can get it. Um, so the healing power of humor talked
Mm.
about today. The new one is the AWE factor. And the one in between was about lightening up grief, was embracing life after loss. It was
Awesome.
so great to be on the show. I can't believe it's over. Went so fast.
It does. Yes. Well,
Yeah.
that's what happens when you're having a good time and laughing.
Right.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us today, and thank you everyone for tuning in, being a part of this show. If you want to share in the comments the time that you laughed, feel free to, and go do something fun to lighten up the mood. All right. Thanks again, Alan,
All
and
right.
thank you
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please take a second to subscribe, as it really helps out a lot. If you're looking for more content, there's all sorts of information over at howtohappy.com. And if you want something a little bit more condensed and concise, I've also written the book Mindscaping, which is essentially a framework for optimizing happiness. So we'll have the link there as well. And that's all I've got. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.